Nationwide Mutual Insurance has become a household name over its 93-year history. In 2016, the $26 billion company realigned its various operations under the Nationwide name. Now, behind the success and growth is an IT organization at Nationwide that's seen investment in legacy modernization. It's all part of a digital transformation story that's aimed at providing a better customer and user experience. And a significant strategy in this effort centers around opening up IT services via APIs to speed and streamline development and integration. Hi everybody, and welcome to this video webcast brought to you by Apogee and IDG. My name is Jim Malone with IDG, and I'll be your moderator. And I'm delighted to have a pair of experts from Nationwide and Apogee with us today to share insights and expertise around the milestones that Nationwide has marked on its digital transformation journey and what's got them excited about the future. So first, let's meet John Rethans. John leads business transformation strategy at Apogee. Apogee is the enterprise API management solution of Google Cloud Platform. John helps customers transform their businesses using an API-first approach. He also leads Apogee Compass, the industry's first self-service assessment and recommendation tool for digital transformation. Hi, John. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Great to be here, Jim.
Also joining me today is Rick Schnierer, Associate Vice President, One IT Applications with Nationwide. Rick, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your role at Nationwide.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate being here. I support enterprise technology solutions, which includes a lot of the shared technologies at Nationwide. And then I also have a traditional IT for IT organization as well, which IT users use to do their daily work.
So far, what are some of the impacts you've seen on Nationwide's business through or as a result of digital transformation?
There's been a lot of positive impact, and I would say we're just starting on our journey. One example is a small company in California, pet insurance. We've spent a lot of time in a short amount of time with a partnership with Google, creating some APIs to get us out in the ecosystem, leveraging some back-end systems, but also creating new business value through the use of APIs. As a result, we've seen a 60% increase in quotes and kind of expanding the funnel in which we start driving more binds through the pet insurance product. That's just one example of where the Apogee platform has helped us kind of expand our reach to customers.
John, I'm interested. What are you seeing in other companies, similar experiences?
So what Rick is describing is something that's very common amongst the customers that we're working with. There's great companies out there that have been around for almost 100 years, like Nationwide, and they're looking at what customers want and demand today, and they're trying to find a way to take what they have in terms of their business data, their business logic, and all their legacy systems, and apply that to a new world, right? Into a world that's looking for new kinds of products. So, the story that Rick was talking about in terms of releasing some APIs and then connecting to an ecosystem of partners that are trying to sell things like pet insurance, which wasn't a big business years ago, but is very popular now, is something that we see a lot of folks doing.
Rick, in general, how has technology helped with your digital transformation goals? We'll start at the high level, then we'll drill down into some of the particulars.
Technology has really enabled innovation and enabled more of a product-based thinking that we're starting to go towards at Nationwide. So the easy part is the technology piece, but the culture piece and what we've been doing as far as continuing to take advantage of new product innovations at a speed unlike what we're used to has really been where Apogee has really helped us along. Like I said, we've spent a lot of time modernizing our legacy systems, partly to allow for ease of integration and provide for a better experience, but that better experience part is also something we're focused on too. What we see is our members, our customers, our producers, depending on the various businesses, want a more modern experience. They want to come to work and operate in the same way they do at home. So we're using technology to help enable that experience, to help drive growth, but then also to allow for ease of integration through things like APIs and Apogee.
Rick, it sounds like there's been certain technologies that have been especially impactful during your digital transformation journey.
I provided the example around our pet insurance and how that's driven growth and quotes. Another example is Nationwide not only does property and casualty business, but we have Nationwide financial products. Nationwide is one of the largest provider of public sector retirement plans across the U.S. In one of those cases, small amount of work for our Nationwide financial business partners, but a small amount of work to expose some of the illustration capabilities that we have. So as an example, a use case, We have someone that's trying to drive a quote for a different product in their office. The old way of doing things is you would have to create a quote and also a different product distribution and create an illustration around that. We expose some APIs, and before the use case would be, hey, let's change the quote. We have to print new documents out and those sorts of things. Well, we exposed an API in a very low risk sort of way. It's driven process improvement for our business partners and created a better experience. As a result, they'll want to sell more products.
It sounds like speed is part of it, time to market. Talk about that a little bit. Why is that so important? And how has that changed at Nationwide?
Yeah, so the speed to market is critical for everybody. There is so much disruption going on, both fintech and property and casualty, that we have to constantly look for ways for us to disrupt ourselves. That goes along with our pivot to more of minimally viable product thinking, minimally marketable product thinking as well, and trying to innovate in a rapid fashion in almost a test and learn sort of way, so that we can expose certain things or expose new products, expose new processes to learn about whether or not people are going to use it. And if they don't, throw it away. But we have to figure out ways to continually disrupt ourselves so that we're not disrupted.
Yeah, that's a really interesting vein I want to get to. That's you're talking about the big shift in the way things are done, a cultural mindset shift. But I want to get back to that in a minute. I want to ask you first, though, about legacy technology. We mentioned it right at the beginning. How have you approached that legacy technology challenge?
We've been fortunate where our business partners have really understood the need to transform our back-end systems, our systems of record. So we've been on that journey for a while now. And it's things like creating a better experience, but also has allowed for us to reduce the amount of integration points that we have through simplification. So as an example, we have 6 applications that we have supporting our property and casualty business. We've gone down to 1. What that allows us to do is innovate rapidly, because you don't have to build all those back-end integrations, and we do that via the API platform through Apogee. So that legacy transformation has actually allowed us to accelerate a little bit more experimentation because there's less complexity on the back end.
John, that's a really interesting point. Usually you hear legacy transformation talked about as kind of a drag, but here it's the efforts help speeding things up for Rick Shop.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a common pattern that we see with all the folks that we work with is, they have businesses, particularly Nationwide being almost 100 years old, they have businesses that are built kind of in a historical fashion, right? So you take old paper processes, and the original systems were kind of taking those paper processes and replicating them. And then every time you open a new channel, whether it be mobile or web, which were treated differently, right? And then you've got voice coming online. Trying to treat all those differently and mapping those back to old paper processes doesn't really work, and it creates this redundancy of systems that Rick was describing earlier. So the legacy modernization effort is more than just kind of moving around systems in the back end. It really has to do with how do we feed these new experiences and iterate these new experiences quickly, because now we kind of have a very vastly simplified IT estate that's serviced via APIs to your outside systems that are clients that are consuming these legacy applications. And so what Nationwide has managed to do, going from 6 systems to 1 system, is that's a huge difference. And it'd be really interesting to understand how has that changed kind of the speed with which you're able to get new systems and experiences out to your customers.
Oh yeah, it's created a crazy opportunity for us to rapidly accelerate. So old way of doing things is we'd have to build multiple integrations, leveraging kind of the old SOA mindset of monolithic services that are built for reuse. By kind of consolidating it, maybe 6 and maybe 7, but however many systems are reduced down to 1, we've really cut our development time to a minuscule amount through leveraging APIs that are exposed via the system of record. What would have taken 200 hours worth of development work now takes 10, 20, 30 hours. And the great part is that we may put something out there that doesn't work and we don't use it anymore. I mean, it's a low risk. It's not a heavy SOA type expense that we have to incur.
There's another really important constituency here, and that's the developers, who are a key part of this story. You've mentioned them a couple times. talk about your relationship with the developers and what their role has been, and some of the interesting issues that have emerged in your relationship with the developers.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that our developers have had to had a little bit of a mind shift as far as how to go about developing APIs. But some of the folks that are coming out of college, there's an expectation that we have this capability as a part of our DNA. So there's a war on talent from a developer community perspective. So we want to make sure that we're creating great experiences not only for our members, but how our developers get their jobs done. We've done things such as had API hackathons, where we've given people the opportunity to explore and experiment in a low-risk sort of way, to almost give associates the opportunity to experiment, but increase engagement from a developer perspective, so that we can continue to not only make our developers feel great about the work they do, but also give them an opportunity to experiment with new and different things.
John, I'd love to hear your perspective on that, the developer question.
If we're really thinking about end user experiences and how to create great ones, the people who do that are the app developers, right? And so what those folks really need to be able to spend their time focused on is, all those kinds of product-y questions about how end customers are using the apps and the experiences you're creating. And what you don't want them having to do is spend a lot of time haggling with back-end system owners about how they're going to get access to this or that system, or why is this legacy service written the way it is, and how can I understand what somebody did 10 or 15 years ago, right? What you want them to have is a really clean interface that they can access via a developer portal, that they can onboard onto easily, and that you're able to obviously see what they're doing, control what they're doing, manage what they're doing, but you're really giving them that clean interface so that they can quickly get what they need, so they can innovate, so they can experience in a low risk way, in the way that Rick is describing. But really their key focus is on those experiences they're trying to create, and they're kind of coming back to the shop, so to speak, getting what they need, and then going out and doing the work that you need them to do, rather than spending time kind of wrangling back-end systems.
Yeah, and along that line too, we've spent a lot of time creating a better experience from a developer portal perspective, not only for internal customers, our developers, but also for our external partners as well. So we want to make sure that our experience is anchored back to what not only our developers would expect, but also our business partners.
Rick, you've talked about how the developer portal and things like that have changed your internal culture. How about your relationship with the marketplace?
So I've talked a lot about the internal experience of the developer portal, but we've spent a lot of time on creating a great experience externally as well. What that has allowed us to do is open up new business models through exposing our APIs externally. Some of our onboarding processes to create new business partner relationships used to take 6 to 8 months, now takes a matter of hours or days because of the exposure externally. As I mentioned, the developer portal has opened up new business opportunities that may have not been possible in the past.
Interesting. All this can be seen as it can be a disruptive process. How has that worked culturally and mindset-wide at Nationwide?
Nationwide has always been a risk-averse company, which is kind of ironic because insurance is about taking risk. But here recently, and I would say in the past 10 years or so, we've really started pivoting the conversation around, I had mentioned earlier, minimally viable product, minimally marketable product, and what are we doing to make sure that we're taking smart risks and not letting perfection be the enemy of good. And those are the words that not only I use, but the IT leaders use, but also we're seeing come across for our business partners as well. They understand the rate of technology change, the opportunity there is to take advantage of, immensely disruptive technology in low risk ways. So really just the words that we're starting to use and our tolerance for taking chances in smart ways.
It'd be really great to understand, what does that look like for some of the customers or some of the employees you have? Right. What are they seeing that's different about how they're incentivized, what their titles look like, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so this is something new for us. We have a new enterprise CIO that has been driving more of a product thinking mindset. And John, as you alluded to, that's not an easy pivot to make because it starts going down funding models and how you fund things. But what it has allowed us to do is we've just shifted. We're fairly mature from an agile perspective. We're on a DevOps journey. We leverage lean practices. But the product-based shift where you actually own a product and you don't own the applications, and your responsibility is to create value and drive business outcomes, our teams are still getting used to that. I mean, that is, it's a relatively new concept, not in the industry, but new for us. We've gone so far as changing titles in our organization. So what used to be application owners are now product managers. And that just, it may seem like an insignificant change, but it's pretty significant for us because it really aligns to where your focus should be. Your focus should be exactly what you said, around kind of creating a better experience, understanding the value that you're trying to drive, and getting really deliberate about measuring the outcomes you want to drive through product innovation, not through applications, but by the product innovations you create. And you can create those in many different ways. It doesn't have to be through a particular application. And in many instances, we leverage Apogee to help drive some of that innovation.
Rick, have you had to set up kind of any formal KPIs or metrics to measure that success, to know where you're at?
We're still working on it. So getting our technologists to think about outcomes is not an easy challenge. It shows up anywhere from how you get business cases funded, but also to some extent how you write story cards and describe the value that you're driving through delivery of this technology. So it's still TBD. I'm confident that we're going to start talking about value-driven and unit cost for a product, but we're just not there yet.
John, this is probably a common thing you see with this big shift in mindset. The way to measure the successes, how are people coming along with the new way of doing things? You probably see this quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And so it is a huge mindset because people do what they're incented to do in a work environment, right? So you never want to give people incentives that are counter to what you're actually trying to achieve. And so typically in the case of APIs, what we see is, metrics that are focused more on adoption, right? So, kind of a classic kind of project mindset would be, how many APIs did we create this year, right? We had 5, now we have 40. That's good, right? But the reality is, it's not about how many APIs you have, because most organizations have lots of them. It's about which APIs are driving business outcomes for you, right? So, for instance, in the pet insurance business, right, the measure of the success of that API is, how many policies are being sold through the channels that API services. So you really want to focus on, and if that API isn't getting consumed, then the question is, why is that happening? Is it happening because the business model that the API is serving, there's something wrong there? Or is it because the API is difficult to interact with or to onboard onto, and so therefore people aren't using it, right? And so really that product mindset is around examining those kinds of questions, and you want to give your teams incentives to ask those questions and then try and solve those problems, as opposed to saying, well, the API is out there, we're done.
Right, exactly. And we did the exact same thing. So we started with how many APIs were published, and then we started pushing around, okay, well, where are we driving business value? How many business value APIs do we have out there? So this, we're transforming how we talk about those as well. And I think kind of the pivot to more product-based management will definitely help make sure that you're not only managing the technology, but you're actually cultivating the product.
Rick, it sounds like there's a real focus on business value. You even mentioned a business value API. Talk a little bit about that.
So with the business value API, we really started inspecting what value and what outcome are we looking to drive with this particular API. So we've talked a lot about the pet insurance quote API. We used to just measure the number of hits, how many times it was consumed. But then we really wanted to understand is this API is out there to drive quotes. So how many quotes are we really driving? And that's not an easy thing to do to understand based on consumption. But we put some telemetry in place to understand, okay, well, are we driving the outcomes that we want to drive? And it's not all about consumption. It's about how far into the funnel, closer to the buying process, is this API being consumed? And that's really where we're starting to talk about, okay, what value are we looking to drive? It's happening in our property and casualty business as well. We've got other APIs that we're exposed to buying policies for things like renter's insurance and those sorts of things. So we meet with our product owners and help them to find, okay, what value, what outcome are you looking to drive, and get really good about measuring that.
John, what's your reaction to that in Apogee world? That sounds really great.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it's exactly what the Apogee product is designed to do is to provide all the kinds of analytics from the customer experience all the way into the back end so that you can do this kind of deep analysis. And really what Rick is describing is Nationwide beginning to think and behave like a software as a service business, which is a new thing for a lot of organizations that are built on a previous business model. So all these models, what they're really shifting to, when you hear the word digital transformation, which can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, it's really about the move from a standard business model that is built up over 100 years, in the case of Nationwide, to more of a modern SaaS business. And that's why that project to product shift is occurring.
Yeah, and we even think about the context of our technology as just being another SaaS provider, to your point. We're thinking about how we define ourselves as a company as well and who our true competitors are. So we're starting to think about, okay, is technology companies, are those our competitors? It's not necessarily just being fintech and other property and casualty organizations, but not only are we providing SaaS-based services to our end consumers, our customers, our members, but also who are we competing against to deliver more value and drive growth from a profitability perspective.
Rick, as we've talked, one of the themes that's emerged quite a bit is leadership. Talk to us about how you've approached that leadership quotient here.
Yeah, the tone at the top has been phenomenal, especially here recently. We just had a new enterprise CIO start, and he really started talking about innovation and then how we can leverage APIs to help accelerate innovation and disruption. So by setting that tone and kind of making it okay to take risks, you start seeing our associates act in different ways, and also some of our technologists willing to take more risk in the context of leveraging APIs to do that.
John, do you see this as a kind of an important trend?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've learned over the years of doing this is that you certainly can make progress in pockets without a lot of leadership support, right? So you can get started, you can get things built, you can have some impacts, but really, to get the kind of system-wide change that's required for an organization to completely transform itself and to really change the way in which it behaves in the marketplace requires that top-down focus. And so, it's very heartening to hear stories of, CIOs that are really embracing kind of an API-first approach, because what that means is their organizations are going to be able to make those process changes, make those incentive changes, those funding changes to move the ball much faster than in organizations where folks are really trying to do it in pockets or from the bottom up or the middle out.
Rick, you've also mentioned a few times your relationship with your business partners. Talk about how important that is and how you've gone about those.
Yeah, that goes hand in hand with being a product owner. What we've seen is from some of our more digital, from some of our digital areas, what we've been doing is inviting our business partners to be a part of our development lines, to where they're actually influencing the work that we do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we're focused on driving the right value at the right time. So it's critical to have your business partners aligned with what you're trying to do, especially when it comes to new product innovation.
Is that all about relationships that you have with these folks, or is that part of the leadership too?
I mean, it's trust, right? So we have, I think, we have great relationships, but those relationships are created and anchored back to the trust that you've established. So, I mentioned earlier that we want to be smart about the risks that we take. We want to bring our business partners along to make sure that they're on board with that. And there's no better way to do that than have them be a part of your lines and be a part of the team that's delivering the value.
John, what's your take on the business IT relationship?
Yeah, I think, Rick said some really important things there. And I think, your customers, your end customers, don't really care about your org chart, right? So you don't want to ship them your org chart. And so in doing that, you want to make sure that business and IT are tightly aligned so that experience feels that way to your customers, right? We've all had that experience where we've opened an app on our phones and there's some critical functionality isn't there. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, it's because they didn't talk to the team that handles that functionality. And sometimes that's a key part of your business, right? And so what you want to make sure when you're doing this work, and it's part of that product mindset, is you bring business and IT together and you're working together as a matter of course, because at the end of the day, what you want your customers to see is just the thing that represents your brand and not the thing that represents the various teams within your organization. So the fact that Nationwide is on that journey, they're doing that work, is really, speaks well to the future of where they're headed.
What are the biggest lessons so far in this journey?
So there's been a few things that we've learned along the way. So the importance of both top-down and bottom-up communication and also influence. John has been a great partner along the way, and Google and Apogee have both been great partners to help drive API thinking as a part of digital transformation, but also working bottoms up with our associates and our developer community to think in a different way, to reimagine how they do development and to start thinking about REST-based services and those sorts of things. So that's been the biggest thing from my perspective, but then also too helping to drive the cultural change. So this isn't necessarily all about technology. It's about pivoting a risk-averse kind of environment into taking more risk in lower investment sort of ways. So taking a risk in a back-end system that requires 300 hours worth of work is a big proposition. But when it takes 10 hours to innovate in a less risky way, we've learned a ton from that.
And what would you tell other IT folks who are looking at embarking on a similar journey? What are some of the best pieces of advice you would give them?
Your architects are your best friends. They are helping to drive a new way of thinking from a technology perspective. So be tightly coupled or tightly partnered with your architecture community. Be tightly coupled with your business community as well. John had mentioned when we first started our journey to bolt on to some of your big digital products and projects. We did that, and we saw a lot of growth as a result of that. But again, go. That's the other piece of advice I would give folks, is just don't overanalyze. Just start moving, start innovating in maybe lower risk environments. Don't wait, just go.
John, has there been anything about Rick's journey that has been really surprising or echoed other experience you've seen in other industries?
Yeah, so this move from project to a product mindset is really great, and it's great to see that organizations that are large institutional organizations like Nationwide are really embracing this. And so what that really looks like is it's a shift from folks that are thinking about IT project delivery in terms of budget and time, and here's a requirement, and as long as I deliver it on time, whether or not anybody uses it, I've done my job, it's out there. But now leaders like Rick are pushing their teams to really think about, what's the use of this product? And if we create it, let's make sure that we push for adoption. And if it's not being adopted, figure out why, and then make some changes. And so doing that seems easy, but it's actually quite challenging because it requires the entire structure of how projects get funded, how people have, incentives to do their work. Because people want to do good work, but if good work is defined as kind of project delivery, that's what you're going to get. Yeah. If good work is defined as customer happiness and adoption with a product, then you're going to start driving towards that.
I want to hear more from both of you guys about how Apogee Compass, in particular, fits into a digital transformation initiative.
So Apogee Compass is a tool that we created to kind of take the best practices we've learned from working with great companies and customers like Rick and Nationwide, and put them together in kind of a set of best practices and recommendations that customers can use to kind of get ahead of the game, right? So folks that are starting out on an API journey, or who maybe have been going at it for a few years and are trying to figure out how to move faster, they can use this tool to get a sense of their benchmarking, where they stand compared to others in the field, get some recommendations that are very actionable, as well as some connections to other resources that can help them, teach themselves and teach others in their organization about how to do APIs first the right way.
Yeah, and since we've been on our journey for the past 4 years, we use the Compass as kind of a guide, exactly as it's called, to help us course correct on our API strategy and our journey. I mentioned several times that we're still kind of at our start or beginning, but I feel like we're progressing where we need to because of some of the learnings that we've had by leveraging the Compass.
Rick, before we go, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about what you're excited about for the immediate future.
I feel like we're just at our starting point. We've invested a lot in our back-end systems, the API platform, and how we're thinking about digital and taking advantage of technology trends, it provides us the opportunity to not only innovate but potentially leapfrog the competition. So, like I said, I'm really excited about what the future holds for our company, but also too, I'm really excited about how we're able to take advantage of all the work that we've done thus far and really essentially leapfrog the competition.
Well, that brings us to the end of our time for today's webcast. I want to give a big thanks to Apogee's John Rethans. John, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
And a big thanks to Rick Schnierer with Nationwide. Thanks for being with us, Rick.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
We appreciate your expertise and insights. And of course, a big thanks to our audience for tuning in. To learn more about Apogee Compass, go to compass.apogee.com, or you can check out the resources that are linked in your player. And for Apogee and IDG, this is Jim Malone saying, thanks for watching.